Okay, we're now ready to import our vendor bills, our vendor credits, and our journal entries that are impacting the AP balance into NetSuite. So before we get started, right, we should make sure that our CSV files are ready. So we've got everything set up as a CSV file. And if you've got more than, I'd say, 2 or 3 transactions, I would recommend adding a test transaction where you would load just a single vendor bill first and then validate that it works and then update the rest of the transactions. The other thing I'd recommend that you do before loading anything is to take a look at your vendor bill. So if you just go to a vendor bill in the user interface, and you want to make sure that there's no other required fields that need to be populated that might not be on our template. So this could be like a class or a department or a location on the header level that needs to get added. So you can see my file right now, there's really no other required fields, but in your instance, they might be required. And so in that case, you would need to include one of those segment values in the import. Which should be okay because, again, we're going to reverse the GL impact of this in the next step. Okay, so with that, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Setup, Import Export, Import CSV Records, and I'm going to load my vendor bill first. So I'm going to go under Import Type, I'm going to click Transactions, and then I'm going to scroll down to Vendor Bill. And then I'm going to click Select, and I'm going to pick my test file. And in this case, we're going to be adding a new vendor bill. And so here's our field mapping section. And so there's a couple things I like to add. So you can see that NetSuite's already attempted to auto-populate, or auto-match, I should say, the fields. So approval status, you can see that got populated. So I'm just going to click this provide default value, and I'm going to change that to be approved. Due date auto populates. Now vendor is picking up the QuickBooks vendor name. So I actually want to grab my name ID, and then I'm going to click the pencil, and I'm going to click the internal ID reference type. External ID is fine, memo is fine, and then posting period, I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the vendor bill, where I'm going to select a default value as November 23, and then I've got date, and then you'll see that this items line pops up automatically. So I'm going to actually remove that because I don't want this field to be included at all. So you can just click that little X, and that will remove that line. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to add any other columns that didn't auto populate. So number is my reference number. Vendor is not needed, past due isn't needed, open balance isn't needed, count isn't needed, NetSuite type is not needed, AP account ID. So that's going to be the account at the header level. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you only have a single AP account, that field will not be populated, and you won't need to map that AP account ID at all. So you can just ignore that. And then the suspense expense account ID is going to be the account on the expense level. So we're going to grab the internal ID there. And then posting period and approval status, we hard-coded into the template. And the only other addition that I'm going to make is I'm going to bring in this line description, and I'm going to also map the memo to that. And again, keep in mind, some of these names might be slightly different. So like reference number might be called bill number in your account. There might be some differences that you'll just need to factor in. So once we're ready, we're going to click next. And I'm going to call this optimal data open AP bill. And again, this is saving the import template so that when we load our second batch, it should we won't have to do all those mappings again. I'm going to click save and run. We're going to click import job status. And we can see that our vendor bill loaded correctly. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to transaction, payables, enter bills. and we'll go to list. And now you can see that the vendor bill has been loaded correctly. The status is open, so that's where we can check that approval status. Now I'm going to go ahead and click into this, and I want to make sure that my posting period is November 2023 and not October like the date. Because again, if you don't include that, if you don't map that field, it's going to default to the posting period, the natural posting period for the date. And so you can see this date is October, but the posting period is November. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do a video, I'm going to continue to do the journal entry and the vendor credit, but essentially the process is the exact same. So feel free to skip the rest of the video if you're comfortable with the imports. Otherwise, you can hang tight, and I'm going to go over the videos, or how to import the vendor credits and the journal entries. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to Setup, Import CSV Records, and we're going to go to Transactions, and we're going to change this to now be vendor credit. Grab my credit file, and we're going to do Add. And I'm just going to go through these. Name ID, right? And that's going to be an internal ID. External ID auto-populates. Memo, posting period, I want to hard code in to be November 2023. Date's fine. The reference number is going to be the number. And then here's this items row again. I'm going to delete that. Going to go ahead and add the account. That's going to be the AP account ID. And that's an internal ID. The suspense expense account is going to be on the expense line. So you're going to get this warning that's saying, hey, there's another required field if you're going to include something at the expense level. And so I would just click OK. And then you can see that the amount, that line now populated. And so we're going to bring in that amount there. And then I believe the rest, oh, and then we'll bring in this line description, and that can also be the memo. And with that, we're going to click Next. And again, I'm going to bring in this I'm going to call this Optimal Data, Open AP Credit. We'll click Save and Run. Go to the import job status, and we can see that one also successfully loaded. So we'll go to Transactions, Payables, enter vendor credits. This one also successful, and we can click into it and confirm there's no approval issues typically on bill credits. And so this one's good to go also. So finally, we're going to do the journal entries. So we're going to go to Import Export. We'll do transaction again, do journal entry. And I'm going to go ahead and click the workflow because in my instance, I need to do that for the journal to process. Again, we're going to look at our mappings, that posting period, November 23. The subsidiary, I'm going to select as the parent. For my instance, all these other fields look good. So entry number, I'm going to populate as the number. Grab the name ID, so that's going to be the name on the line level. So in my instance, it's called entity name, and that's an internal ID, so I map that. I'm going to ignore the AP and the suspense expense account because those are on the account ID column. So the account ID is how I'll map in the account. Those are IDs. And I'm also going to, the line description, I'm going to bring in the memo. And then I'm going to call this Optimal Data, Open AP, Journal Entry. Click Save and Run. Click that import job status. Okay, so now we've loaded all 3 of our transactions successfully. So I would go back now if I had, for my bills, I'm gonna load those offline so that all the vendor bills are loaded in AP. And in the next video, I'm gonna show you how we're gonna reverse the GL impact and then how we validate that our balances came over correctly. And that will be the final step in loading our Open Accounts Payable. So we'll see you in the next video.